Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show with your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. Had some coffee today?
Well, you know, man, I'm excited about these shows. I do my internet scour, and I just flood. And it's so weird how some of these guys, like, sometimes I'll do it and it just disappears, and then sometimes I go, I just got 15 emails back. So this is one of those times where we've got some cool guests coming up in the very near future, actually, for the next, well, all of our guests are cool. I shouldn't say anything like that.
No.
But these guys are very interesting players, a little bit different take than what we've normally had on. And, of course, we want to share that with everybody. Right. And speaking of everybody, thank you, listeners, man, because you guys are doing it.
That's it. Numbers.
Yeah, man, you put it down.
That's right. We couldn't do it without you, friends, relatives, countrymen, acquaintances, wives, husbands, and anybody else that you can think of that you want to turn on to us.
That's right. We really appreciate that, too.
That's right.
And listen, when you do tell your friend, your relative, your everybody but your enemy,
right?
Make sure that we would just ask. Just tell them that you heard it here first.
That's right, because we always try to provide you with a first, and a lot of times we provide ourselves with a first.
Yeah,
that's for sure. So hopefully we have a first for you today, and it's a first for me as well. So we're going to take a break. We're going to pause for the cause, and we're going to come back with our guest of the week, a very cool guitar player who started playing at a very early age for someone of note. Yeah. So we'll be back with our guest of the week, Mr. Thomas McRocklin.
CastFans, I got 3 words for you right here. Vinyl me, please. What a cool company. Every month they will send you a new release, and it's not just something you can get in the store. Everything you get from Vinyl Me Please you can't find anywhere else. They work with the artist and the record houses to come up with something really special for you. And it comes with a 12x12 album-inspired art print. And what I think is really cool, a paired cocktail recipe to go with your music. How cool is that? They give you things like colored vinyl, custom lyric books, exclusive artwork, personal notes from the artist, much more. And if you don't like it, they have this program called Swap, where you can actually send it back and pick from another offering in their archives. So it's a really cool thing. Just go to joinvmp.com/AAA or go to our website and hit the link. You'll really dig it. Thanks.
Hey guys, this is Gus G, and you're listening to Amps and Axes.
All right, and we are back with our guest of the week because we always keep our promises and have a guest of the week. So we are now back with the one and only Mr. Thomas McRocklin. Thomas, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking the time.
Jeff, I must say one thing, man. Back in the day.
You got a story? You got a story?
I always have a story. Back in the day, it was like, I don't know, 99% of the people walking the planet that play guitar was looking at this guy named Steve Vai going, well, this is the whole new level, right?
Yeah. Alien of some sort.
All the way, here's this guy, because it was always, the internet wasn't there. So you had to kind of find out these little things. And it was all through print, and some of it conflicted with other things, and we all know this, right? So it was like, there's this guy, Steve Vai. He plays for this guy named David Lee Roth, who just left Van Halen, but there's this back history where he replaced Yngwie Malmsteen in a band called Alcatraz, but prior to that, he was in a band with Frank Zappa.
Right.
So then, all of a sudden, there's this very young child playing one of Steve Vai's guitars, not a 6-string, but a 7-string, and just crushing it. And it's like, where did this happen?
Steve Vai had a child?
and it's Thomas, you know? And I mean, he is like, well, now it may as well just become firewood, because he's literally, a third of my age. Right. And he's just doing stuff that just doesn't even look right. So, but we got to get the story. So anyway, I'm going to leave it to you, Jeff.
There you go. Well, I'm going to, what I always do, I take us back to the beginning. And Thomas, we're going to jump in the Wayback Machine and find out where Mr. Thomas McRocklin came from, where were you born and raised, and what got you into this wonderful world of music, and how the hell did it happen so early?
Yeah, well, I started playing very, very early, as you may know. So, I mean, as far back as when I was 5, my dad always had a guitar in the house. And pretty much when he'd go to work and be out the house, and I'd be home with my mom and stuff, his guitar would be dragged out from wherever it was hiding, normally behind the TV or something. And then he'd come home and find it was on the floor, or it was on the couch or something. But
so he knew you had taken possession of it while he was, making the money. So,
yeah.
So where was the house? Where were you born and raised?
Newcastle, so north of England. Huh. Yeah, so it's like 3-4 hours from London.
Well, they say that the Newcastle Brown will really knock you down.
Oh, it's bad stuff, I hear. Yeah, so definitely, if you see it on the shelves anywhere,
that's right.
Do your thing and avoid it. Yeah.
Not according to Steve Marriott.
Yeah, no, there's some people that I think that dig it, and but no, I'll definitely avoid at all costs. Yeah, so and he was really into rock and stuff himself. Kind of he was into Ozzy and Thin Lizzy and stuff like that. In fact, one of the first chord progressions I learned was the chords from "The Boys Are Back in Town" by Thin Lizzy.
Wow!
And I think once he saw that I could kind of get the changes in time and stuff, he kind of thought, "Yeah, we'll take it serious and stuff, and start to pay a little bit more attention."
How old were you at that point?
I was 5 at that time.
God. Of course you were.
Yeah.
So I got a question though, real quick, and hopefully you can remember back. What did it look like? Did it have? Because I'm really curious. Like, what was unlocked that it was able to make that hand-eye thing all come together, and two hands? Do you remember what it was? Did it even look like?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the particular guitar he had was an Ibanez artist, and it's kind of like a Les Paul style Ibanez, so it's quite a hefty body. And in fact, I posted a picture of it recently. It's like, it's like I was always like a really small child and then kid.
Yeah,
so the guitar looks like huge. But the thing that kind of I remember, is just like the first couple of times when you get the changes right, or you get the chord and it's not them fluffy notes, it's like it actually sounds like something. I imagine most guitar players have that moment where it's like, oh right, it's happening, that you've been sat there for like 20 minutes trying to get that one chord and it clicks into place, and it's like the magic, it's like that's like the start of it all.
That is so cool, man, because at 5 you're still getting coordination.
Right.
Just simple coordination. Like, let's not fall down when we run.
I'm sure there was plenty of that. I'm sure I came off my bike a lot.
Exactly,
But yeah, so I kept playing and got some different guitars. So before I got into the sort of Ibanez thing, after I really got into Steve and stuff, before that, I had things like BC Richards and Hamers and assortment of different guitars. Until I was around about 7 or 8, and
wow,
yeah. Then the sort of next big break, if you like, happened when I opened up for Ozzy when I was around about 8 or so. Maybe just turned 8. And yeah.
You know, as he says so matter-of-factly.
I think, yeah, a lot of, you know, I mean, it's awesome looking back now and think, bloody hell, that did happen.
That is
but,
so cool,
I think
man.
when you're doing stuff like that at such a young age, it's like, you know, it is almost like a little bit like you take it like for granted, and you know, but absolutely great memories. Opening for Ozzy was.
Now you said your dad had that guitar in the house that Ibanez, and he went to work during the day. Was he any sort of professional or semi-professionally musician? I mean,
no,
he
was into his rock music. He was a little bit of a rebel, you know, but he never really took any lessons, and you know, he could probably get 3 or 4 chords together himself. But he was just kind of really interested, and unfortunately, he kind of went to that level of buying a guitar and putting a guitar in the house and stuff. Otherwise, you just, you know, might never have got around. I might be playing the flute or something, you know. So, but
well,
no,
there's always the Jethro Tull cover band.
Exactly, you could go in.
But I mean, you it sounded like you went through a decent number of guitars in a short amount of time. I mean, you know, usually we'll interview somebody. It's like, oh, you know, I had this acoustic guitar with strings, you know, half inch off the fretboard for 3 years, and I picked it up 3 or 4 times and could never play it. And then eventually I got this Japanese electric guitar, and that was something I could play. You know, you're going through Ibanez guitars like candy. How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, the early stuff before I was like sort of 7 or 8, it was like, you know, it was like say it was BC Rich and Heyman. It was all kind of metal, you know. It was like the Tony McAlpine signature model and Steve Stevens signature Heyman. So, you know, really kind of that rock domain sort of guitars. You know, I was like really into Alice Cooper and Ozzy and kind of metal really growing up. You know, I mean, cruising around with my dad listening to Van Halen and stuff in the car was like, that was the thing, you know.
Yeah.
And then I think I saw one of the early David Lee Roth videos, and I saw the Floral Gem for the first time, and I was like, oh, yeah, that was it. And you couldn't get them in the UK at the time. So, you know, when my dad would go through all the magazines, and I think he found a shop in New York or something. And we got one delivered, and it took a couple of months to arrive. And I still to this day remember opening the case for the first time and just seeing like the Floral Gem, and I was like, oh, so cool. And then
but your dad had to be so supportive. I'm assuming your mom, if she was in the picture, was supportive as well. But you know, just to, and I know what that must have taken back in the day for, you know, somebody to just, you know, whether it's a credit card or a check or something to the States to get the guitar over there. There's just the shipping and the the import tax and everything. It's like that's because I know at 6, you know, you weren't working full time. You know, that's a commitment on your parents' part.
I can tell you this. If you know, what year was this, Thomas? This was early 80s, mid 80s.
Yeah, like 87, 88. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I bought my Green Gem, that thing was $1,700, which was about $400 over the stock price of the normal gems.
There's a story I've got for that Green Gem as well. I got one.
Do you?
But
what number is yours?
I got you know, it's documented on that site that stamps them and stuff, and kind of registers where they are. I think it's into 3s.
Okay, I had number 37.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, I sold it and bought a full stack because I was like, I just was like, well, if I take this out, people are gonna point and go, "You're not Steve Vai," and then, and I was like, I just, you know, Loch Ness Green is just not. It doesn't go well with all my clothes.
Well, even in the 80s.
Yeah, right? Even in the 80s.
When pink power suits.
Yeah, it was the perfect spandex complementary color.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, my dad was always a bit, you know, he wasn't, you know, because I used to dress like from head to toe, and that's probably the reason he got me in a lot of those places, like opening up for Ozzy, because you know, we just turn up at these random places, and he'd say, "He's here to see Ozzy," and the security look at this guy, this kid with like a guitar and dressed in leathers from top to toe, cowboy boots 4 sizes too big, and oh yeah, that must be right. Come on in.
Oh, that is so cool.
Then you do the sound check, and then Ozzy's there, and then it's like, right, you're opening. I was like, great. Wow. But the green gem thing, yeah, I think it was in Sam Ash. Maybe, yeah, I'm sure it was Sam Ash. One of the big stores in New York at that time, and my dad would take me to New York to meet with some guys at that time, and I'd had the floral gem, seen yet more David Lee Roth videos, this time with the green gem, and for the first time I'd seen it on the wall in the store, because you'd seen none of this stuff kind of over here, and it's like, oh! Yeah. So the sales guy gets it down and lets me try it, and I was I just wouldn't leave the store until it was mine. And he's always reminded that we went to the next store, the next guitar store along, and it was like $400 cheaper. He's like, always reminds me of that.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but now the price tag on that thing is insane.
All week now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're awesome. And I always believe, like, I think I get really, although my guitars are like really, especially the older gems, they're heavily used, they're quite on appearance, they're really beaten, and a lot of them have had replacement necks, but you do get really attached to them and stuff. And I'm a firm believer, like, once you make a connection with a certain guitar, just I couldn't face getting rid of them. It'd be it doesn't bear thinking about.
Right. And, it's the only guitar with a handle too, so
exactly
it makes it easy to carry around.
It's its own carry-on.
For sure.
But yeah, I've got a bunch of gems, but I actually play RGs now. And and a lot of them are quite modded and stuff now, but I do have a lot of sort of gems from sort of back in the day. Obviously the green one that we mentioned that we got in New York, and the first one was the floral gem.
Yeah, you played that everywhere, that floral gem.
Yeah, that was kind of the go-to.
Yeah.
There's some shots with floral gems from sort of Bad for Good days as well, but it's not my floral gem. So one time I was on tour with Bad for Good, and I think my guitar went missing in transit, maybe on a flight or something. And it was going to be like a day or two before it was like found. It was tracked, and knew what it was, but it was just miles away. So fortunately, Steve sent one of his gems, floral gem. Wow. And I was pretty wild, kind of 13, 14, or that sort of age. I was always kind of breaking stuff and doing stuff, and had Steve's favorite gem, and unfortunately I cut the handle out of it. And I had no idea it was his favorite guitar. And then he found out that I did that, and then so you'll see some of the shots of my gem. There's like hack marks. There's chunks literally hacked out of it, and that was his revenge on what I did to his gem. But,
oh my god!
We're all good now. We're over it. It's all.
Wow!
Wow!
So, I wouldn't hack up his guitars now.
Right.
I think it's just at that age.
Well, he's probably got more. It's his guitar.
Oh, yeah.
He's probably got more of them.
Yeah, he's got a whole room full.
Totally.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So, other than the gems, what was the rest of your rig like back at that point in time?
Early days, yeah. I used to have like Galleon Kruger. They did like this little combo, which was like really small.
The 250 ml.
Right, the 250 ml little lunchbox thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it was perfect because at home, you could play it and it sounded really cool. And then you take it somewhere and you could hook a cab into it. But then I ended up hooking in cabs at home and drove the neighbors, absolutely crazy. But yeah, it was like the default amp that I was using for quite a while. Wow. And then I started using some Rockman stuff, and I remember they had that little combo that you could sort of split apart and had that really cool clean sound. So I used that for a little while, and then after that I just started using default like a JCM 900. And Mark Chimino, who's a guy that used to sort of tech with Steve and do a lot of stuff with Steve, he also helped me out a lot, and he was like amazingly good at modding amps. So he did some sort of mods and mod some cabs and but fundamentally, it was just like the simplest rig you could get that I was using, especially with the Bad for Good days. It was just like a Marshall head, one cab, and if I could take a distortion pedal along for boosts on the solos, that was great. And that was it, So it was like super dry. Clean sound was just done by backing off the gain. And it's like, I think, I think you get a lot of the tone from your fingers and stuff, and I think if you can play well with a really stripped back thing, you're going to sound good on a lot of rigs. So I think it's always good to do that. But
and I think you mentioned that a lot of tone comes from your fingers. I think the less things in the way, the more that tone comes through. It absolutely does.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's I think it's a good thing just to be able to plug into an amp with nothing on it and make it happen regardless, But I do use, having said that, I do use a fractal axe effect these days. but it's mostly from the flexibility point of view, and it does sound great. I mean, I went through a bunch of different modeling stuff, and to be fair, the Line 6 Helix and the Kemper, they sounded good. But when I plugged into the axe effects and I just recreated a very simple rig, like one head, one cab, it was like, wow, instantly it was just felt amazing. And in the studio monitors, it was just like perfect. And then all the DSP side of things as well. I don't use a lot of effects, but just have like a little bit of reverb and delay on certain patches. It does that so well, because when I started playing again quite recently, it's just, you quickly trying to figure out what rig's going to work and stuff. And then I had a Helix for a while. Then I was putting Strymons in. It's suddenly you've got this huge board of kind of pedals, and it's like chaos on the floor. But the axe effects has been absolutely amazing, and it's just getting better and better with each firmware release. So I really like that.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, we speak to a lot of people, and it does make fly dates really simple. There's not a whole lot to carry, and you could just go with whatever clean backline amp that you wind up with, and all your sound is with you, and that makes a big difference nowadays. It does.
Yeah. I think I'm at the point where I think if I can get 90% or 95% or pretty close to the real thing, I'm happy, because the convenience side of things makes up for it, and also that I can have the same patches that I'm working on the EP, just to take those to a live scenario without much work. It is like a huge benefit as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's where that's where I will say, when you have all that and it's just one box and it is one button, you can just not. Then you're just playing. Granted, there may be a little bit of a curve getting to where everything is dialed in correctly.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice, because once you're there, then it's like, I just hit this and all this happens. And that kind of takes the tap dance anxiety out of it a little bit. Although wah-wahs, they still get you.
I've got a 95Q on the floor, and for many years I had an old Budweiser, the sort of purple and silver one.
Oh, I know that guy, Jeff.
Yeah, and it was.
You're welcome.
Well, you got one?
Jeff is the guy who made it.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Okay, that's awesome. Very, very cool. And that thing was just like the best sound of wah. And it's the same wah that I had for like since the early whenever it was released. I've had it such a long time since it was first out, and great. And then I started doing some stuff with Dunlop, and I wanted a wah that I could engage easily sitting down in the studio.
Yeah.
And the 95Q has the auto on and off, kind of auto return.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that was it. And I don't use the wah a lot these days, but it's like it's super convenient just to be able to engage it really kind of effortlessly without thing. But
so I wonder Steve didn't ship 5 of them to you from Morley.
Great.
Yeah. I did try some of them. Yeah. I did try some of the bad horses, but they just had that really kind of aggressive, hard sort of top end, and it's like.
And it's weird because you can't do that cock thing that you can with a regular wah, because it doesn't go backwards.
That's what I was going to say. You can't do that with the auto wah, auto on wahs either. You can't.
You can't. you got to have them.
Place, right?
Yeah, that's where. Look, there's always a downside to everything, right? So
it's a trade-off.
That would be the only thing that would be the one thing that used to get me, because I owned a bad horsey.
Okay.
And right when they first came out, now maybe the circuitry has gotten faster, but I remember like it would be that half a second that it would take for it to kick in, and then
absolutely.
the half a second for it to shut off.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting that you say that, because when I use the wah, it's literally in between riffs, kind of like throw in a lick that'll have something on it. So it's like really important to like engage and disengage really quick for me. And unfortunately, the 95Q does that like more than quick enough. So
good.
Cool.
Yeah,
but the wows will get you. You're right.
So yes, Thomas, I probably didn't even tell you. My partner Jeff was now you weren't the owner. Were you the owner? Anyway, he does all the building. Okay, so he built all the Buddha stuff.
Scott and I were the co-founders of Buddha. Yeah.
Wow,
but Jeff is the guy that actually uses the solder, erases some brain cells from all the flux, and then and now he owns East Amplification because Buddha, went to the
wonderful people in Meridian, Mississippi.
Yeah, and then they have done wonderful things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have the original one that Jeff made.
Yeah, the awesome one.
Yeah, and there's actually a Steve Vai story that goes with this, because before we started Buddha Amplification, I had a little company called Precision Audio Tailoring, and I would modify and repair, tube amps and things like that. Right. And I got to the point where I was modifying wah pedals. I had designed a new inductor that kind of reflected the old phasal sound and things like that. So I started to install that in people's wahs, do true bypass, all that kind of stuff, and that they got very popular. And this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, when you could go to clubs and just go talk to the artists that were there before they started. And I used to go in, and they would plug into the pedal, and wow, this is great. And sure, I'll take it. I'll take one. So the same thing happened with Steve when he was playing. I think he was playing Hammerjacks, a big metal club in Baltimore.
Right.
And I went in and I said, "Would you like to try this? I did this and this and this. Sure." So he plugs in, and even before he engages the wah, he could hear the difference because it had true bypass.
Okay.
And it wasn't sucking the signal out. He said, "Oh, I can hear the difference already." And then he played it. And he wound up taking that one. I think I wound up making a few other ones for him. So he would use the modified Dunlop Crybabies that I modified before we even started turning that into a Buddha product, which was the boudoir.
Right.
And that's we wanted to strike a deal with him to be a Buddha artist for the boudoir pedal. And turns out that Morley got to him the day before we did. So.
Oh man, what a story!
But it's
awesome,
all good. I sat on the bus with him in at a G3 tour in Washington D.C.
Yeah,
and he said, "Hey, we'd like to get you to come on as an artist for this." He went, "I signed with Morley yesterday, and I'm not a guy that goes back on my word."
Sure.
I went. I totally understand that. Respect it. Conversation stops right here. So
fair play. It's a bit of a kicker.
Totally, but he enjoyed the boudoir before it was ever the boudoir.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, well, mine's still sat top of the shelf and looks perfect and still sounds amazing. So
nice,
amazing.
Well, there you go.
Hang on to it, man. Hang on to it.
So where do we leave off?
we were talking gear. We were talking Axe Effects, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
And so there was a lull in the playing for a while.
Yeah. Kind of quite a while actually. Yeah. So I mean, after the whole sort of Bad for Good thing, and I came back to the UK and did an instrumental album, released that, and I think a lot of the time when I was around studios and recording, especially with Steve, recording the Bad for Good record, I was always really into the studio side of things, into the gear. And, I remember Steve kind of teaching me how to use the bus on the mixing console for the first time. He's like, okay. And, watching him, kind of work the console. And then, I was in the studio with Jimmy Iovine and stuff. And he's an amazing producer as well. And just seeing some of the tricks and some of how he'd use certain gear in certain ways. And that side of things always kind of fascinated me almost as much as the guitar side of things. So when I came back to the UK, did the instrumental album, but I was always at that time I was already starting to listen to different types of music. And I was really into rap and hip hop and then drum and bass and jungle and all different subgenres of that sort of music. And then I got my own first sequencer, and then everything started to kind of change. I was like, all right, I need a sampler, I need a mixer. And then, I've got a really obsessive kind of personality. So next thing you know, it's like the guitar is kind of pretty much out of the picture pretty quick at this point. And then I got really, really into kind of making electronic music, and then later got into producing and mixing for other people. And not under the McRocklin name or anything, all totally, completely separate. And then one thing kind of led to kind of another, got really into producing, and then that led into getting kind of mastering and doing a lot of finishing off projects and stuff. And then, before you know it, life kind of takes over, and you have a family and do normal kind of stuff, I mean, having grow up with like such a crazy childhood, to kind of do regular things was like quite refreshing.
Wow. You don't often think of it from that aspect. It's like, life's been so crazy. Let's just enjoy quote unquote the normal things for a while.
Playing like laser quest and stuff, like laser tag sort of games and stuff, and just hanging out with friends, because at one point I was like back and forth to the States so much. And when Bad for Good went on tour with Joe Satriani, and at one point we were doing like 2-3 flights a day, and then you're on the bus, and it's like this non-stop thing.
Yeah, you're missing a childhood,
Yeah. Wow. Exactly. You kind of grow up a little bit on the road, but I mean, going back to my dad a little bit, I mean, give him sort of credit, because a lot of the time when we'd go to the States, you'd be adamant that we stayed near Disneyland or Six Flags Magic Mountain, or had some kind of thing that I would be really into as well, so it would always be like really fun as well doing those trips. But obviously at some point it just got really, really hectic, and and the gigs were amazing, and playing on the road with like Joe Satriani, these great venues and stuff every night was like amazing memories, fantastic places. But yeah, kind of all that led to kind of moving away from playing the guitar and getting more into the sort of production and then, like I say, kind of in the mastering side of things. And I think it's great now, because all the sort of skills and stuff that I learned by doing that, I'm sitting here working on this EP now, and I can kind of just have an idea of how I want it to sound in my head. And fortunately enough, I kind of can execute it here in my own house, where it'd be a little bit difficult if you kind of express this type of, especially this type of sound that we're kind of going for with this record. It's like it would be difficult, I think, to execute otherwise. So I always take the sort of positives out of everything.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the experience that you had, everybody's experience hopefully gets them to where they are today.
Exactly.
And you use you use all that you have experienced, hopefully, in what you're doing now. And whether some parts were rough, some were tiring, some were what, it's all better to have them and to build on them and to use them to get further than not to have them at all.
Oh, absolutely.
You just take all the knowledge that you've gotten, and now you're doing what you want to do, where you want to do it, and how you want to do it. No,
totally. And no, I definitely don't have any regrets on anything, and it's all been just absolutely amazing memories. And on the playing side of things as well, I think when I started playing again a little while back, it also gave me the opportunity to kind of sit down and kind of see what kind of play I want to be and what kind of techniques I want to have, and kind of almost completely reset how I play. So now I play very differently to when I was like a teenager, for example. I don't I can still do the stuff that I did then, but then there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to introduce into my playing, and through all the electronic type of music and hip hop and all the sort of more rhythmic sort of stuff. I really wanted to have different ways of kind of expressing that. So kind of really now I kind of play with a little bit more of a drier sound, a lot more different type of picking articulation, and I play really, really different, and to how I did, and to the point where I spent like a couple of months just kind of, okay, this is how I play this scale. Now we're going to play a completely different fingering, and I did a lot of classical kind of growing up, so bringing in the sort of fingering and positioning from that into the electric guitar. And I think that's there was also a good opportunity just from having such a long break, just to completely reset a lot of things and add some new stuff. And I think now that a lot of the comments I get seem to be on like the phrasing and the the kind of interesting sort of melodies and stuff. And I think it maybe does come from kind of just completely starting to scratch with the whole playing.
Yeah, that's
so cool.
We get locked into what we do, and of course you hopefully get better, hopefully build on it. But to take a substantial amount of time off and then to go back, I guess maybe you've lost some of the muscle memory, not lost in a bad way, but lost the habits, kind of thing. And you can consciously go, well, if I'm going to figure out how to play this, I'm going to figure out how to play it differently or better or in a different way. I think that's great, man. That's great.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a cool thing to do. And just literally I spent 2 or 3 months right next to a really awful sounding bright dry amp on purpose so I could kind of just listen to all the shit in the playing and say, all right, don't want that, and then you kind of work all the kinks out, and it's all right to say right.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Absolutely.
I can rephrase that. So I can take all the bad stuff out you're playing, and so it's a good opportunity to do that. And even simple things like I went to the default picks that I was using back in the day, and then changed over to like Jazz 3s, and then Jazz 3 XLs, and then I started to get a little bit of wrist pain because I was going from playing so little to playing so much. And playing really hard, for hours on end. So it's like within a couple of months, the right wrist was like, really quite sore. And then I went changed over to the Dunlop Prime Tone plectrums, 0.88s, and they've been like the perfect balance. They've got a little flex in them. They're sort of pointy like a Jazz 3 XL, but they've also got a great tone as well. And if you're doing a lot of different pick and articulations and slant picking and angle and all that sort of stuff, they're great for that.
Interesting.
Yeah, man.
I've said pick geek.
Pick geek. That's right.
So I got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, back in the day, Steve had a bunch of performance guitars. It was a company in California called Performance. And not too many people remember them. Maybe a lot of Californian guys will. They didn't really get their tentacles out too far. I think the company ended up folding at some point. They were you could buy like bodies and necks and all this stuff. Well,
I do remember them.
They built him a couple custom guitars. One was the Green Meanie, or not the Green Meanie. I'm sorry, it was one that looked like Swiss cheese, but it was green.
Yeah, I saw that guy.
That's in the Steve Vai. That's in the David Lee Roth Yankee Rose video.
Yeah.
And then he had a flame guitar that was built by them. Now, supposedly those guitars were stolen at one point when they were on tour. Like the whole boat, Jeff, was gone. Right. God. So Performance slapped a bunch of guitars together for him because he had no sponsor at that time. He was not with Ibanez. So they put all these guitars together and they tried to do, some custom stuff, but the flame guitar, gone. Like it not in existence anymore. That original one, who knows where it went. So he he also had that Charvel that was the one that basically he had hacked to no end, and when they built the Ibanez, that was the Charvel's recreation to make the Ibanez. Okay, but you have one of those flame guitars.
I do. Yeah, very, very cool guitar.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, so when I was recording the Band for Good record with Steve, when we were finished most days, I would head up to Steve's vault, and that's where all the cool guitars were, So you'd have like the hard guitar, the Universe, and the Flame guitar. But the Flame was one of those guitars that, I remember growing up and watching all those videos, So although I'm hanging out and we're going to the movies and doing all these kind of normal stuff and goofing around, smashing stuff, still I'd watch a lot of his videos,
Yeah.
And the Flame guitar was out a lot, every time we'd come up to the vault and try and see where I'm at, you'd often find me sitting jamming and playing through the Flame guitar.
So it was a rebuild, right? Obviously, because
I guess because it's got an Ibanez neck on the one that I have.
Ah, okay. So it was a rebuild, Jeff. Because I was like, I remember the story. It was taken and like never recovered, and it was Performance, and Performance had a hockey stick headstock like the old Kramers.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'll let you continue. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's really cool that you've got so much detailed facts on it as well, because it's really interesting to me as well. But yes, so Steve would kind of find me playing the Flame, and one day we'd finish tracking some solos, and it was my birthday, and we'd had a surprise birthday party kind of waiting upstairs, and one of the things that Steve gave me that day was the Flame.
Holy crap!
Wow.
Yeah, so
nice.
I mean,
happy birthday.
I mean, here's the thing. Now, is it a practical guitar? No. It looks like a Flame. I mean, it's cool, but it's not like, hey, look at that jazz guy over there playing that Flame guitar. It's not like that, right?
It's a great video guitar.
It's a great video. Look, you can wear spandex with it.
There you go.
And it works.
Exactly. I think I did for a little while after that, yeah.
But the caliper that Steve, his notoriety, once he got in David Lee Roth, it went from like probably a 20, Jeff, to like a 95. It because you're sitting backstage talking about pedals, right? And so for Steve to hand you this thing is like, Paul Newman's wristwatch just sold for $17 million the other day because
he was a pretty generous guy. I mean, that wasn't the only guitar that he gave me. I mean, in fact, a guitar that's probably even more sought after is the prototype Universe.
Yeah, the paint one, right? The swirl paint.
That's right. That's the very guitar that was on the front and back of Passion and Warfare.
Good God.
And Steve gave me that guitar after I did the video. The audience is listening for him.
Yeah.
And a similar kind of deal. I mean, I was in a hotel in Los Angeles, and he sent a cassette over, I think, which was like just before Passion and Warfare went out. And it was like, this is the album, check it out. And also, the guy also dropped the guitar. And it's like, open up the case, and there's this Universe, the 7-string Swirl guitar. And it was also a lot of confusion about that kind of guitar in the early days, kind of pre-internet days, because obviously on the album, a lot of the releases had the not Photoshop, the airbrushed cover, because the production model was not going to have a monkey grip on it. But the one on the back of the cover, on a lot of them, I think later on, there must have been different runs, because some of the physical copies I saw had the monkey grip and some of them didn't. But anyway, most of them didn't have the monkey grip in it. But in real life, obviously, that guitar does have that one. But really, actually, it sounds great. I mean, I recently fired that one up a little while back and did some videos on it, and it had been in storage for such a long time, and I literally just cleaned it down a little bit, fresh set of strings, and it sounded amazing. Really, really cool sound.
Now,
cool.
Just to let our listeners know, when he says it's the prototype 7-string Universe, this is the 7-string guitar that started everything that went 7 and now 8 and 10, all that.
Wow.
That guitar burned out. It did not sell. Ibanez stopped making it. I mean, it came out. Steve had his name on it. A bunch of people bought it, but it wasn't enough to sustain. You know how it is, Jeff. The product wasn't going out the door fast enough, right? So the guitar disappeared. And then two guys named Monkey and Head in a band called Korn started, went out to a pawn shop, bought two of them, probably had them stripped down or whatever. And then it all started again. And literally that band resurged the 7-string. And now, of course, we're in the stratosphere with what is out there. And in, the fan scales and, all the crazy multi-scales and everything else. But that was the guitar. You have the one.
The Holy Grail, as people say, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
a lot of responsibility.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome, and it's faded a lot, because I guess it's not lacquered, and but it's still, the patterns and the swirls on it's absolutely beautiful. It's really, really cool.
That is wild.
And even in its kind of faded glory,
Dang.
but still sounds great. Sounds great.
How about that, Jeff?
That's crazy. Now, is that going to be on anywhere on your new release that you're working on?
No, I mean, I actually don't play 7s, or if I do anything that's dropped, I kind of literally just go down to C standard for a couple of tracks or a couple of sections in certain tracks. So I'm tempted to kind of explore the 7-string a little bit more, because I never really give it a fair shot kind of back in the day, even though when I had other 7 strings. I was just always more of a six string sort of guy, and so maybe I'll do it, but just I feel comfortable on a 6, and I kind of the sort of stuff I'm doing now, it kind of lends itself more to a 6, and yeah, maybe it's a revisit. But I do have some long scale guitars, and one of the Ibanez RGDs, which is it's great for drop stuff, because it's just the tension on with the long scale, and that's really cool.
Like a baritone almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's like not far off a baritone, but you put some like 12 to 60s on it, and yeah, it's got a huge sound. And
good God.
So for a couple of tracks, it does have that sort of thing, but not in a kind of chuggy, low sort of riff sort of thing. But it's for some kind of more sort of parts. But yeah, I'm also trying to like avoid having tracks with lots of different tuning, because then when you start doing stuff outside of the studio, you need to have those guitars with you, and it's all kind of more gear, so
yeah,
if I can avoid that. Yeah, I do use an Octaver a lot in a lot of the patches. Like, yeah, I do. It's just like don't know if you can hear that. All right,
yeah, we can hear a little bit of that.
Oh, there it is.
That kind of really
cool.
Yeah, so
it's not that loud, but we it's there, we can hear it.
Oh no, we can totally hear it, and it's for me, getting back to the 7-string for a minute, I don't think that I could ever play one, so I would just cheat. I would just make the 2 bottom strings unison E, and
exactly
that way, if you hit it, there's no foul. Yeah, just detune one just a little bit, and you got a built-in chorus. Yeah. See, that'd be me. And then you put an octave on that.
Yeah.
You do this thing, and I'm going to pull up the song here. It's not going to be audible to our listeners, because, of course, we can't because of lovely copyright laws. But the song is called Gravity Storm from Steve Vai. And you do this thing. You just released this thing on Instagram the other day, and you just did it just now, and it's a little, it's a little bit hard for our listeners to hear. But if you check out Thomas's Instagram, you do that thing where it has that weird, almost like you're depressing the bar, but you weren't touching it. And I was like, how is he pulling that note like that? Because it went down.
Yeah, a lot of bend downs. Yeah, so you start with a note bend, and then you kind of pull it to lower down, so you get the opposite effect. And man, I think it's the way you phrase it as well, so
God, you're fast, man. I'm like, how's he doing that? I can't see his hand doing anything different, and it goes down, Jeff, when he plays.
Well, yeah, to execute a pre-bend at speed is really difficult.
Yeah, and he's moving on a couple things, and I'm like, man, come on, how you doing that? Because I'd be grabbing the bar. I would just have it in my palm, and just because I'm super lazy. First off, second,
so my bar's always facing away from the guitar. You'll see in a lot of the videos, and if I use the bar, it's like literally to do like that sort of thing. So it's not as maybe it's like as drastic that. So so in that riff that you're talking about there. And then maybe I'll have
and that octave pedal's on too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, just a little sort of using kind of more of a percussion sort of effect and literally bashing the bridge sort of area rather than the actual trem bar, just to get it doing like 8 notes or something,
See, it's those damn tricks, man. You gotta, I'm telling you, and that's one thing that we always tell our listeners. It's not the guitar. It's you. You gotta learn all these little things to be able to pull it out because, and you're a lot, obviously, working with Steve for the time that you did and stuff, you can see some influential stuff. You don't sound like Steve because Steve his stuff kind of flows a different way, but you can see some of those things. And it's just one of those, like, you can tell, like, every millimeter of the neck. And what I mean by that is, like, what it's going to sound like.
Yeah. It's also interesting that you say that because, my dad, when I started playing, there wasn't a lot of guitar teachers in my area, especially for the style of music that we wanted to do. And, I was reading metal and Randy Rhoads and all these different guys. But it was very difficult to kind of say, all right, we need to take him to that guy to help him do this. So the lessons that I did have was really just classical guitar. And then my dad kind of got really frustrated by, the lack of it at one point. And he came up with just like this way of finding out every note in every key, and he'd draw them up. And for like an hour a day, we'd go F sharp, and I'd call out the notes in that scale of that key. Mm-hmm. And then he'd ask me to play, kind of certain notes at certain part of the neck, and kind of go through what maybe weren't necessarily like 100% correct scales, but it meant I could play the same scale in 5 or 6 positions because he knew what the notes sounded like. And just by watching my fingers, he would memorize, so even though he couldn't really apply it, he kind of could look at the notes on the paper and say, oh, okay, that's the wrong note that he's playing there. But it did mean that years later, no matter where I am on the neck, it doesn't really matter to me if I'm in any key, if I'm in like A sharp and I'm, in an awkward position. For some people, it's all the same, if that makes sense. I just feel kind of comfortable in every part of the neck.
Well, God bless your father, man. I mean, my dad was slamming the door going, hey, turn it down.
That's a great exercise. That's a great exercise. I mean, it really does make the entire neck really intimately.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like boxers, right? If you're a boxer, you can always look at a guy and go, that guy's a boxer. And it's like usually he doesn't drop his left hand when he throws his right. Why? Because he did it 74,000 times.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. I mean, that's so cool.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely important to kind of learn, to play in different parts and not get too comfortable. Just, if you're playing an A, you're going to be around that 5th fret. If you're going to practice that stuff, play an A and don't play in the 5th fret for a whole night, and just kind of work on different parts of the neck,
Yeah.
Just, a lot of the tones, and, if you're in certain keys, obviously certain parts of the neck, it's completely different tones and stuff. And a lot of the time I'll rephrase things I would normally hear played on different strings in different positions because I like the tone on certain strings for a certain quirky.
No, it totally makes sense. And you can play a scale or a run on a different part of a neck, and unless you specifically need to wind up on a specific note, either going into it or coming out of it, you're generally going to wind up in a different place. And it
Absolutely.
just, it's the same scale, but it just sounds different. Like, you start and end with different notes, and different ones happen in different places. And it's so refreshing, to hear that.
No, and again, when I start playing again, one thing that's really very, very noticeable is like if say we're in E minor and I play a pentatonic, a lot of people are going to go kind of 1/4, 1/3 and do it. And what I do, I start the scale on my second finger, And then it gives me the first finger that can go behind the notes. So then if I'm like in E and so I can go down to that D note, where normally you'd have to go to the next string to do that.
Damn.
So you can get different phrasing.
Yeah.
But I can only get that by forcing myself for a couple of months to not play E pentatonic, for example, with my first finger in the normal position and only start with the second one. And then the other thing is you need to get a bit more strength between your second and fourth finger.
Yeah.
So it feels natural. But once it clicks, it's like, wow, it opens up so many different, more interesting phrasings for what would be a kind of a fairly simple lick, you know?
How badass is Thomas, huh?
That's very cool, man. That's very cool. Hey, you know, I don't want to run too long here, but I do want to go back for a minute to, you know, touch base on the project that you're working on now. You know, your new thing, because you had done so much like rap and hip hop in the past, and just getting back into playing. You're going to incorporate any of that into what you're doing now?
I'm going to be rapping on every track, so yeah. No, no, I'm definitely not rapping. No, definitely some of the influence is going to be there. So you'll hear in certain tracks, it's kind of got the backbeat of, you know, kind of hip hop sort of grind to it. And there's a little bit of kind of electronic sort of influences that come through. There is a couple of tracks already on YouTube, which is like early versions of those tracks, you know, when I started playing and people really wanted to hear stuff. And it's like, oh, I think this is the kind of rough direction I'm going to be going in. But now it's like, okay, we kind of got things figured out a little bit and the execution is much better. But definitely there's kind of electronic influence and, you know, I've got a quite dark sense of humor as well. So, you know, there's fun stuff in there as well.
What are you using for your to execute the drum beats?
So we recorded the drums with a live drummer, a guy called Oscar.
Awesome.
Great drummer, local guy, and I played with him in the past as well. So I'm really excited that he's drumming with me again. So we kind of recorded it at a studio, but we're doing a lot of sample and drum replacement and stuff as well. And certain sections, it's just him live on the kit, and then suddenly it'll change to another section, then the snare's replaced with an electronic sounding snare as we go through different sections. So we're trying to do it so it's not, you know, it's quite subtle in places, but it all adds to the kind of electronic influence.
And you're just using plugins, or is...
Yeah, I mix a lot in the box, so I use a lot of UAD stuff. So I've got a couple of UAD octa-cores in the main machine. And the audio interface is just an Apollo twin, so it's just literally 2 in and 2 out. But here at home, I just need 1 at a time. And so it's all mixed in the box. And yeah, I mean, I really
Apollo is United Audio, right?
Universal Audio.
Universal Audio.
It.
Sorry, Universal.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it doesn't get much higher than that. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're great stuff.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
And mixing in the box, I'm you know, obviously it'd be nice to go out in a huge console and it, but I think the flexibility and being able to tweak things and have control.
Well, honestly, I mean, huge consoles, you know, they're kind of going away, man. I mean, when you can, you know, when you can have these digital boards with these scenes that are, you know, 48 deep and they're 12 tracks wide, and
well, that's
you know, you can just go forever, and
that's right.
And meanwhile, the thing's only taken up 2 feet of the desk.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, that's it. I mean, I do everything with a keyboard and mouse, and I do have, you know, I use Ableton.
Okay.
So I do have things like Push 2 and stuff like that, and some controller keyboards. But
Ableton's mostly for the EDM side, right? That was where you did a lot of the compose. My son is becoming an audio engineer, and he said, "Can I have Ableton for Christmas?" And then I looked at the price, and I went, "No."
Yeah, if you get that suite version, it's quite expensive. But yeah, if he starts off with like an intro version or something, it'd be absolutely fine. But it's great. Yeah, I mean, that you know, I did a lot of the electronic production for other people in Ableton, so it was one of those pieces of software. It's like once I clicked with it, because I didn't at first, it was game over for like Logic and Cubase and Pro Tools and everything. It's just the workflow and efficiency in Ableton. It's so quick, and especially when we're doing like a huge amount of routing. You know, a lot of the time, you know, in electronic stuff, you'll want to sidechain a lot, and different sort of routing options, which is not super. Maybe it's not mainstream, but you know, it's quite involved routing, and it's just so quick in Ableton to kind of execute that. So I love that software.
Well, I'll be emailing you questions every now and then, I guess.
Oh, you're more than welcome to, man. Yeah, anytime. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, my son brought it to my attention, Jeff, and I was like, I've heard of it, but I don't know what it does. And he goes, oh, it's got a great composing tool, and obviously a lot of the EDM stuff is written through the Ableton software, but it's not necessarily has to be that, obviously, because you're making an entire album with a real drummer, by the way, which I was expecting something different from you. I was expecting, oh yeah, we got superior drummer, throw it in the box, you know, do that.
Well, you know, a lot of times you'll use the real drummer will play, and you know, you will use that as occasionally as triggers to go into all of that, and you know, optimize the tone that you really want to have in that particular song. Yeah,
you bang on, because I use some of the Get Good drums, some of the periphery packs and stuff, and you know, that's a great sample pack for Contact, and some of the snares are from that pack, but it's played by Ozzy, and it's all his kind of grooves and his ideas and stuff.
That's so cool.
It's just exactly what you said. You know, when you can't get that sound and you kind of, you know, you want that snare, then we're not afraid to kind of go out and just replace that channel entirely with a sample bass track, you know.
I mean, it's all a live drummer. It's just you're tweaking the tone, you know.
Exactly.
That's it, really.
Yeah,
exactly.
and that's cool, you know, because that can't always be done. I mean, you know, drums are they're hard to make them quiet.
Yeah. Oh, you know, I've been mixing drums for the last week. Ringy toms, man. It's like
Oh yeah.
It's been driving me crazy, ringy toms. So they've been getting replaced a lot, you know.
It's like, just take a pillow and shove it in there.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Right. Well, cool. Thomas, anything we haven't covered yet? I know you're. I assume you're Ibanez endorsed and Dunlop endorsed. You know,
I'm with. I mean, it's been amazing just since I came back. You know, Ibanez were right there and amazingly supportive. And you know, some of my old guitars, you know, they weren't in the best of shape because they hadn't been played for many years. And you know, we fortunately got over to LA and went to the LA custom shop and got all the parts needed. And they even refurbed a Slam gem, which is an awesome little 3/4 size body gem on a full size gem neck, so it's like a really interesting sort of guitar. It's super comfy to play, but they did an amazing job on that. So yeah, with Ibanez and D'Addario strings, they've been amazing as well, and you know, with Fractal and Fishman is one of the later guys that I'm with, and
they're good friends of ours.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, you know, I mean, when I first heard the Fluence, I mean, bloody hell, it's like
it's kind of it just changes everything.
Oh, it does, yeah. And you know, I mean, I've used DiMarzio's in all my guitars for a long time, and all my gems, they all had tone zones put in a long time ago. And I had the Fishman sort of sitting on the shelf for a little while, and you know, once I seen some of my Instagram clips, that you know, Ken was like, "We've got to get some Fishman to try out." But I hadn't quite got the new RGs I was looking to use, and I didn't really want to put them in the old school gems, you know, because they are what they are, and you know, they're kind of almost historical. So I didn't really want to be hacking into those and putting active pickups in. So, you know, a couple of months later, got the RGs all sorted and put the Fishman stuff in, and you know, it doesn't matter if it's the classics or the Tosins, they're all just unbelievable sounding pickups. And you know, for me, I use like 2 and 4, the sort of split pickups a lot.
Okay.
And to get that kind of really bitey sort of sound, and it's
nice.
They're really good. So if anybody gets the opportunity of checking them out, you should definitely do so. They're fantastic.
One of our friends and former guests, a couple guys, but Greg Kalk and Greg Mara.
Yeah.
They're both.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, they're both. You know, Fishman endorsers.
Endorsees,
sorry. And we got to see Greg Kalk do it live at NAMM, and me and Jeff were standing beside each other, and we were like, what the hell is that? I mean, it was just like when he pushed the button and went into the next stage.
Yeah.
It was really, you can't do that on a video. I mean, it was overwhelming. It was like, whoa. You know?
It sounded great.
And it was just amazing.
Yeah, they're great. And when you play, big clean, big voiced clean chords and stuff, the sort of details you get with them is just unbelievable. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
But
Nice.
they still you've got that nice dynamic range and stuff as well. So they kind of don't sound active, but I don't know how they did it, but
it's
but they do,
if I remember correctly, it was what, Jeff, trusses and and girders. That's right, trusses and girders.
from Greg. Yeah, his
Greg Kalk says,
description,
there's like a truss and girder structure under here. I don't know what's going on, but all the magic happens.
All the signs.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's crazy.
Well, you have a website, right?
Yeah, McRocklin.com.
Okay.
Most of the guys, I post a lot of stuff on Instagram. That's probably my main platform. I'm obviously on Facebook.
Guess what?
It's just,
that is going to reside on your episode in, Jeff?
Perpetuity.
That's right. And it will be up in the archives, and I like that my dog is down here crying at me. This is awesome. This is good pod, guys.
Your dog is sad that it's over.
Exactly.
Poor guy.
Well, I'm gonna step away for a
withdrawal
second.
is what he does.
Yeah, I'm gonna step away for a second. Take care of my dog, Thomas. It's been a pleasure. Jeff, you go ahead and do the outro, and I'll be right back, buddy.
There you go. Okay. There you go. All right, Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time, and it was a pleasure to speak with you.
Likewise, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And just it's so fun to speak to someone that actually started at such an early age, because I think everybody's always amazed at that. Most players don't quite start that early unless you're some sort of prodigy or something. So it's always a pleasure to speak with someone that didn't start in the normal time of learning that most of us slackers do. So it was great to speak with you, man. And are you do you know if you're going to be able to be out at Winter NAMM in LA at all?
I'm hoping to make it happen. Yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense. It's kind of around about the time where the EP will be coming out and stuff, and it'd be great to see a lot of the sort of brands I'm with now as well. So I'm trying my best right now to make it happen, and hopefully it'll come off, because it'd be great to be there.
That's great.
For sure, Mick and I will be out there.
Yeah, man.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you're out there, we'll try to touch base with you. And
absolutely, that'd be really cool.
My Rolodex is going to be pretty Rolodex, like it's 1920. I'm gonna have a sheet, Jeff. It's gonna have like 50 numbers on it. I'm just gonna be calling guys, going, "Hey, we're here. Where are you?"
We're going to stand in one spot, and all of a sudden, 47 people are going to arrive at that one spot. Jesus,
it's just going to do a mass text.
There you go. It's going to be fun. Thomas, thank you once again. If you make it out to LA or anywhere else you go, safe travels and much continued success, my friend.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. Take care.
Have a great one.
See you later. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.
As a special offer to our audiences, warbyparker.com will give you a 5-day home try-on complete with 5 pairs of glasses to choose. Just go to warbyparkertrial.com/AAA to get a free 5-day home try-on. Warby Parker makes buying glasses online easy and risk-free. Their home try-on program allows customers to order 5 pairs of glasses to be shipped directly to them, where they can try them on in the comfort of their own home. For every pair of glasses sold, Warby Parker distributes a pair of glasses to someone in need. Warby Parker makes buying glasses fun, easy, and pain-free. Warby Parker keeps their styles highly curated, fashion-forward, and extremely wearable, while including high-quality lenses and coatings at no additional cost. Warby Parker makes your experience completely risk-free and free shipping all around. Visit warbyparkertrial.com/AAA to begin your free home trial on experience today.
So there you have the story.
How cool is that, man?
From a very early age.
Yeah, brother.
Wow, man.
And it's so funny because I just remember that time, and I remember, because I was heavily into Steve Vai at that time, like a lot of guys were. And I just remember seeing him going, are you kidding me? It's like really, this is like, it's depressing enough I can't play Shy Boy, and now I got this this 8-year-old kid that's
right.
just
It's
going
like
nuts.
First you got like Steve Vai, who's another one of the guys that just takes it over the edge. It's like okay, you had Eddie. Where can you go from? Okay, Steve, look what he's doing. Right, to Steve and Satch, And then you look at this kid, and then you realize, so you can't even come close to Steve Vai at that point. And then you look at this kid and go, okay, they're actually coming out of the womb like that now. There's no hope at all. It's gone.
Exactly, man. I mean, it's very humbling, when you see some little kid come up and he just starts, and you're like, God, I don't do this enough. There's something, I'm not disciplined. What's going wrong here, But just an awesome guy. And to take all that time off, and look, I'm telling everybody, look, go to the webpage, amsonaccesscast.com. You go there, you click on those links for Thomas's stuff. That Instagram stuff, man, he's posting stuff out there all the time, and he hasn't missed a beat, man. Mm-hmm. Not at all.
Oh, we touched on that studio thing for a minute, like the consoles are going away and everything.
Yeah.
It's we just finished recording the new Rhythm Surf Monkeys CD, and we're in the studio, and Dave's got a nice console in there. There's probably 2 8 or 12 channel boards that are kind of like slaved together next to one another, and full built-in console, automated.
Sure.
You can watch the faders go up and down.
Yep.
He rarely touched it. Rarely touched it. It's all soft keys and mouse.
It's crazy.
Soft keys and mouse. Occasionally, all the faders, whenever he went to some other preset, all the faders would jump. But then everything else was soft keys and mouse. And
it's
crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, it's this. It's good because it puts the power into guys' hands that may have never been able to afford it, right? Mm-hmm. Like they could never afford to go into a studio and lay down tracks.
Absolutely.
That could be the next whatever.
Absolutely.
But then you get guys like Steve Vai who have custom consoles made, and why is that? Well, because it's Steve Vai, right? And he can, I don't know if I can afford it or if that's where his ear is. So it's not dead over there. You just got to be able to.
It's definitely not. And I mean, there are guys that, there are guys that just like the tactile aspect
exactly.
of it.
Like Steve.
And their fingers are reflecting what their ears are hearing,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And whether that's on guitar or on a console, it's just for those kind of, accomplished people. I think it's the same thing. It's this tactile part of it that still exists, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is fantastic.
And look, it's and the thing is like some people go, well, can you hear the difference? And it's like, no, but Steve creates this way, so that's how it's. Why would you tell the guy, hey, that's not the right paintbrush? And it's like, well, his product sounds pretty damn good.
Sounds like you use the right paintbrush to me.
Yeah. His paintbrush paints pretty wide strokes too, man. So,
so hey, before we go, I just want to let you and all our listeners know. And it just, we had the CD release party a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And you were there, but
I was there.
It's the product, the physical product has finally hit CD Baby. So now I could announce that the new Rhythm Surf Monkeys CD RSM is available on CD Baby, not only for download, but for hard copy purchase. And I think it's on iTunes and everywhere else, and wherever you buy or purchase or download your music. So if you're interested, Rhythm Surf Monkeys, the album is called RSM, all original material. It's a 7-piece band that I'm involved in the Baltimore, Maryland area. So
sweet.
Check it out if you'd like.
Listeners, go out there, throw a shekel or two towards Jeff and the boys in RSM.
It's 9.99 shekels. It's not much.
There you go. It's not.
There you go.
It's not expensive.
No, it's not. It's not. So hopefully, a few people will enjoy it.
Exactly.
Please and thank you.
So until next time, my friend.
Absolutely. Because, we could be across the pond, we could be across the street, but it's always going to be somebody interesting.
Exactly. I'm Nick Marcelino.
That just leaves me as Jeff Bober.
And we're always saying,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmsonAxis. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage, ampsandaccesscast.com. Thanks for listening.